the golden nugget, the treasure of going through an existential crisis or nihilism or meaninglessness, is that it forces you, going back to you talking about honesty, it forces you to be honest about a life that's worth experiencing for you. And all the narratives and the ego and what will my parents think and how silly will I look, all of that goes away when you're like, I don't want to fucking live anymore. Like, you know what I mean? And so the treasure that people find in nihilism, if we can process through this, is that it forces you to truly be honest. What is the life that I want to experience, and how can I build on that and take like radical moves in that direction? Because then people will say like, oh, how do I do that? I don't have a lot of money, or, you know, capitalism. Like, you can, like, if you actually remove a lot of societal constraints, you have way more freedom than you think you do. Way more freedom than you think you do. One of the first things I did was, oh, you know what I really hate doing? I really hate buying clothes. I'm going to wear these 10 t-shirts and these 10 pair of pants, or whatever it is. And that's it. That's it. I'm not doing this every season. I got to buy a whatever. I hate it. I'm not going to do it. And like little things like that start to add up, where I say no to 1,000 things that actually, truly, you don't have to do. Like, you're not going to die. You really aren't. And so, like, for nihilism, it's like you're suffering so much. You already want to die sometimes. Why not then throw all of that energy into radically making your life worth living, saying no to all kinds of things, and so that you can say yes to the things that truly make life worth living for you. And when you can get that little treasure piece, I see people go from, every day in my work, I see people go from suicidality to, oh my God, what a miracle to be alive.
All right. Britt Hartley, thank you so much for being on the show. For those of you out there who are unfamiliar with Britt Hartley, she is a certified atheist director, best-selling author. You've got your awesome TikTok and YouTube channel, No Nonsense Spirituality. I even have your book right here. So plug for Britt Hartley's book. Go out and get it. No Nonsense Spirituality. Great book. It's been a while since we talked last.
It's so good to be back. Yeah, it's so good to be back. I don't always get to come back, because sometimes at the end of the podcast, it's like, yeah, we'll do this again. But we did it. I'm back. I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah. And you've been traveling, didn't you? You were in Japan
I
not too
just
long
did
ago.
a month in Japan, in June. So that was really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, was that just vacation time, or were you doing any work while you were away?
I was offline totally during that month, and I did some family things and some of that, but I definitely did like some serious study at some temples and shrines. And I really thought that I would be diving into some of the different sects of Buddhism and diving into that, but I found myself being really drawn to Shinto and really enjoying the Shinto shrines there.
That's interesting.
Super
As a
interesting.
spiritual atheist director, I find it fascinating that you still allow yourself to engage with like religious practices while at the same time being atheist. And a lot of people who hear that out there, but they're like, that seems so strange. Like, maybe you could talk a little bit about that space there, because I think it's kind of a unique space that a lot of people might not even
Yeah.
think that it's safe to engage with. Well, I'm an atheist, so an atheist looks like this.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, this for me is like, this is the juicy middle space that I just really love. So for me, atheist just means it's a negation. I'm not convinced of a certain kind of God, a theistic God, the Abrahamic God. And I keep my skepticism and my rationality with me. I never, have that part of me leave the room. But then on the other side, I'm very interested in all of the tools and resources that have been housed in religion and spirituality. So when I travel, my husband likes to travel, and so I'll travel with him, but I always go to the whatever the religion is doing in the area is where I'll spend my time. And so people will be surprised that, I'll go do labyrinth work, I'll go do pagan nights, for solstices, I'll go to temples and shrines, I will go to cathedrals, and I still continue whatever the sacred place is of the area. I want to go there and experience it. And I find that I learn a lot more about human nature, and I find tools for myself and also for my clients to be able to help others. And to me, there's just so much freedom that I can go anywhere there's a tool or resource in spirituality or religion. I can go and check out that tool and not force myself to have to believe the thing that I don't have to, like, that shouldn't be the entryway into these tools, that I have to believe something about metaphysical reality. So once I let go of having to know what is ultimately real, it gave me just so much freedom to then just explore and not have to know. Like, I don't know what happens after we die. I don't know any of these things. I don't have an ism that I've wrapped my identity around. I just have the freedom to explore tools that have helped humans thrive so that my life gets better.
And those places are sacred, meaning, like, I was in Europe one time, and we were in like an old 900-year-old church, and there was a crypt in the bottom, and it's ooky and spooky. And, like, I want to, even if I'm an atheist, I want to go into the Holy of Holies. Like, I want to go in
Yeah.
there and see the little dust particles moving through the air and be present and be awe of that, because I can call that
Yeah.
whatever I want. If I want to call it,
Yeah.
as an atheist, sacred, you can.
Yeah, you really
So,
can.
so
And I
there
know we
should
have an
be,
allergy to it, but we
yeah.
can.
It makes me wish that maybe there is somebody that, like, specialized in uh, showing people how to travel, because that travel is like, man, that makes me jelly beans. I
Yeah,
wanna travel more.
Alain de Botton talks about it. He wrote a book. In fact, I have it right here called Religion for Atheists. That I was just looking up something the other day, and he's talking about something that religions do is they'll do a pilgrimage, and that's a normal part of a lot of our religions. Christianity has pilgrimage, Islam has pilgrimage, where you are doing something with your body, but it's representing a deeper journey that you're making within, right? And so he was actually talking about we've only tapped the surface of someone needs to do a company where you're making some kind of secular pilgrimage where we're going to do all these things and you're going to have an inner journey with this, but we don't force you to believe in whatever we're doing. And
Mhm.
we haven't done that yet because we're still too early in this secular game. We're still very wary of even the word spiritual. We're
Yeah.
wary of, can I even go into this space, or, like, oh, it's religion, so we got to throw it all away. And so because we're still really early, we don't have things like that. But it's those kinds of things that I'm really all about, is how can we get the tool and just leave the dogma to the side.
You don't have to be anything. You don't even have to be an atheist to
Yeah.
me. What are we going
Yeah.
to do when these people emerge that are like, you can call me Susan. I don't care what you decide I am. I'm not a
Yeah.
man. I'm not religious. I'm not,
Yeah.
according to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fun space to be able to be free in.
Hmm.
But like, labels are helpful still too for people to
Yeah.
understand.
It's interesting that you brought up the whole idea of, like, kind of like that uncomfortable phase. And I hope I'm not, like, diving into some forbidden waters here, but I wanted to bring up something that I found interesting. Well, kind of, I've been watching your content as it's been growing on YouTube, and you had a little bit of a back and forth with Matt Dillahunty there about a month and a half
Yeah.
ago.
Hmm.
That was such a
Yeah.
fascinating, like, back and
Mm.
back and forth. I thought you handled it with class, and it was so fascinating. But the thing that I thought stuck out the most out of the whole thing was when he did his thing, you did your thing, and then he had this ridiculously long rebuttal to your thing where he went over every word. But the one moment that stuck out the most was when he seemed to get really fired up about the institution of atheism coming under fire because you had mentioned that some people had reached out to you for help
Mm.
or suggested you as aid. Like, the institution of atheism was now under fire because
Yeah.
someone with the term
no nonsense spirituality is, this space for people who don't have answers and they're coming and they're looking for help.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. That just said something to me
Yeah.
about like
Yeah.
almost the religiosity of the institution in
Mm,
atheism. I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, and I talk about that a lot, and especially people, we have studies that show that the ones who are strongest in their atheism, the most militant atheists, tend to be ex-evangelical white men, and they kind of take their certainty from Christianity and just kind of move it across to atheism. Um, and yeah, the Matt Dillahunty situation was interesting because as far as our approach, our secular approach to things, he was really on board with almost all of that. And where we had a disconnect is he really believed that if you were a therapist, there would be no need for what I do in spiritual direction, that you would never need something that I do. And so my argument was, in therapy, one, therapists are not philosophers. We have a gap there. When someone's moving from, for example, absurdism to existentialism, that might be something that your therapist, like they can't be a philosopher, and do some of that. And therapists have talked about that a lot. They really come to me because they want to understand the philosophical depth of some of their clients in existential crisis. And so there's that piece, but there's also like therapy was created in a time where we were very skeptical of spirituality, that that's just woo-woo bullshit. And then as we got more science on spirituality, like it's very common for therapists to say like, have you explored a spiritual path? I think it might be good for you, right? Like they'll recommend meditation or something like that.
Yeah.
But because of their guidelines in therapy, they can't walk that path with you. They're really sometimes even not allowed to. And they don't know all the spiritual paths that are available and what that person might be needing in that moment based on their personality type or needs. So what I was trying to explain is, hey, there's a gap here. There's a gap here both in secularism and also in therapy, where there's some tools here that we're missing just because in the past they've been under, a religious umbrella. But can we rest? But I've dug in so deep into that space. I have a master's degree in theology, a 2-year program in spiritual direction. I have like just laser focused on that space. And anything outside of that, I will refer to a therapist. And I was trying to explain that there is some value there. And he just didn't buy that because just the word spirituality was so triggering to him. And my argument is like, so many of our words are religious. Like if you say goodbye, that's just short for God be with you. Like that's what that word is. And so to say that we just can never touch words that have been previously associated with religion, to me, doesn't actually seem to be the best way forward in reclaiming these tools that are helpful for people. So a bit of a disconnect there. And yeah, I ended up just kind of leaving it there. I asked him if he wanted to have a conversation because I don't do debates, especially when someone's identity is wrapped around the thing that they're debating. And he said, this is already a debate. And so I was like, okay, well, that was an invitation to a conversation.
Yeah.
You changed it to a debate. So I just kind of left it there. But yeah, there is this disconnect that's happening there's this split that happens in atheism where, the Carl Sagans and the Sam Harrises and the Elaine de Botton's, they're interested in some of these tools from religion and spirituality. They see that there's something there. And then there's a much more kind of militant version that just kind of almost pretends that we're rational robots and there's nothing in that space that you need. And there's a divide in the secular community, I think, there.
Are you
What do you guys think about that?
well, first of all, are you familiar with spiral dynamics at all?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's something very stage yellowy about your approach to all this, which is like not emotionally triggered, sort of understanding. I love that you brought up absurdism in there. I was just saying this week, I said, it makes sense to arrive at absurdism. It makes sense to go from absurdism to nihilism, but it makes sense to go beyond nihilism back to like playing with meaning and stuff like that again. So sorry, I throw things at the board a little bit scattered sometimes. So it's like you stage yellower, I see you. And then and I love it. And then I love what you said there about certainty. I was saying to James Pryor, I said, how do you explain to somebody that's really smart
like Matt Dillahunty or one of these other guys that you listed, where it's like smartness isn't your problem. Like your ability to collect the logical data points and facts and everything is like probably supreme. I don't know. It's probably above average. That's not the problem. It's the problem that you haven't yet recognized by some means that your certainty is hell, is a hell for you. That all that certainty, like logic is couched within reality. It's a tree is not made out of man's science. And that's just very hard to get through sometimes to a deeply intelligent person. But the fact that you're imperturbed and not feigning it, clearly not bothered by it, I'm like, that it brings to mind another model, which is, I don't want to pin that on you. I'm just kidding around. But we were talking about spiral dynamics too. Maybe you wanted to say something.
Well, I wanted to ask you because the first time we talked, I wanted to ask you about it because I've heard you reference spiral dynamics, and so few people actually talk about spiral dynamics. And I see it again. It's just a model. All models are flawed. They're done by humans, but it is also seems to appear to be pretty accurate. So a model
these are great.
like
these, I call them mirrors. Like these are, like you said, like it's not magic. These are just different mirrors to look at to kind of explore what the hell we are, and like why we are this way. And I find that like the more I learn about, spiral dynamics or even Enneagram, or archetypes or some of these deep dives that I've done, it just helps you a lot more with compassion, because you see why someone's doing what they do in the same way that we have compassion for children, and I'm not saying Matt Dillahunty is a child, but you can just see, what's driving a person, and that can help with a lot of compassion versus this space where you take your superiority in religion and you just move it over to atheism, and now you're better than everyone because you're an atheist. And that's
and I love
that's not really getting to the depth of what we are.
Yes, and I love that you said that I don't want to debate, and his response is like, "You're in a debate," But I love that you don't want to debate, and you highlighted compassion because how are you supposed to go up to somebody, right? Like, it makes sense that if you like, first of all, it would be a little bit arrogant to like go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, you're in hell," you know what I mean? Hey, your certainty is like hurting is causing you suffering or something. Like, so many people are the machine is running so well that they would like, a seamless scoff at your comment. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Look at the smile on my face.
It would be a really vulnerable space where I would want, if I could go anywhere with him, it would be this vulnerable space where atheism shifts from truth to well-being. And that's a hard shift, because what happens is, and I see this in atheists all the time, the first few years that they're in atheism, especially after religion, you get the Christopher Hitchens atheism, and you're just, it's fine. Like, you're learning, you're watching the debates, you're angry. Facts and rationality are super important. And then two things happen. Like, I see that the shadow side of rationality is that if you believe that we are evolutionary creatures and we did not evolve for truth or for happiness, but for survival, then how can you actually trust your own rationality? Because we actually don't have that much ground to stand on. And then the second thing that happens is you start to have to ask, what is truth valued for? Why are we valuing truth over everything else? Right. And is it because we think that truth is good? Because there's some things that we learn that may be true that are hard for us to deal with. Like, you're going to die, or the universe doesn't give a shit about you, or you don't have free will, or whatever it is. And so then we have to start asking, wait, why is truth our highest value here? And if you have to choose between well-being and truth, which one do you choose? And for me, I've made the shift from truth to well-being, that well-being matters more. And so that changes how you show up in these secular spaces. Whereas Matt Dillahunty will say that truth matters more than well-being, because truth is really his highest moral value. And so that's where we're going to differ in our approach to secularism.
I like that as a high moral value, by the way. Like, I dig.
Yeah, I did too.
And you seem honest. Yeah. but I get what you're saying there when you say I made this distinction where I decided that well-being was going to have to take priority over this truth thing, because I mean, there's an argument to be made about, like, there's not, like, what do you mean true? What do you even mean by a fact? That is,
and if we're all And like if I could tell someone the truth and push them into nihilism and push them to lose all of their beliefs because they're untrue. And there's sometimes where like I feel like I could do that with people because I can get pretty dark and pretty persuasive. But like, why would that be? Like, why am I valuing that? Why am I valuing truth so much that I'm going to push you to the edge to even suicidality
Or
so that
even
you
persuasion like
have the
that.
truth? Yeah.
The
And so,
demon of
yeah, that just becomes
persuasion can take hold. Like,
yeah, that just
look what I'm
becomes
doing right now. I'm not even
unethical to
letting you
me.
finish your thing.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's where that's where you start to shift where like why am I valuing truth so much? And truth to me matters. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but to me well-being has to matter more because why am I valuing truth so highly if I'm going to cause harm? Because, you know, we talk about how religions cause suffering, but if we are so truthful that we just forget all about human well-being and how we're not rational robots, we're feeling, suffering things, you know, then are we really fighting against suffering by just holding on, clinging to truth so tightly? And so sometimes I think the greatest hypocrisy that I see in some of our most highly analytical people that I've worked with is that they'll make fun of religion because it is crazy. Like it is insane. I come from Mormonism. There are some insane beliefs in Mormonism, but the hypocrisy is that oftentimes they're clinging to rationality as their safety, as their safe place. And so if you're clinging to rationality for safety and someone else is clinging to rationality, or sorry, for clinging to religion for safety, then deep down you're both very similar humans, even though it's showing up in different ways. And that's where I see sometimes the hypocrisy of people who cling to rationality as if we're nothing else.
There's so many little miracles going on. Like within one church, there's somebody that's like, because I find it interesting. Like we react to a lot of stuff. We came from Christianity, and back in our day, there was all this stuff emerging where they would be like, you know, you'd have like a Ken Hovind that's like talking about space and like
Creationism.
physics and how it mirrors the body. Like, but I thought it was faith. And you know, you'll go into a church and you'll see somebody that's almost like living in a fairy tale of like spirit, like religion, spirituality, and then they're worshiping alongside some guy that's like adamantly with logic and science trying to prove that it validates the Bible. And it's how do all these people getting along? This is like an absurd madhouse. This reality. And then I wanted to say something about there's an opportunity here in what we're talking about because I believe it's a good transition what you've done into like this recognition that well-being is of such high importance, maybe like even maybe higher than truth or something. But I think that there's an opportunity here maybe for something novel to happen, which would be explore like, well, maybe even that can be deconstructed, like the idea of what is well-being, not as like a double backing to truth again, but as something else. Like, what happens if I can't be well? What happens if that isn't it even? You know what I mean? I feel like there's a window here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being a total weirdo.
Yeah, no.
But does anyone want to parry off of that? Like go off of that? I don't know.
It
Yeah,
might
let me
be
think
it
on
might
that
be
for a
something
second.
after you take it to its limit. It might be part of like all of what we're doing. We take all these concepts, these things to their limit through lived experience, and after we feel like we've fully gone through the experience of well-being, what happens after that?
Well, what if you're well with unwell being? Like, what if it's kind of a wordless space in the end? Which I think, you know, I don't want to like
I
take for
think we
granted
have
how much you know
enough.
already, but
Yeah, I would say we have enough on the science of well-being and what makes humans thrive and at the end of their lives not regret their life and have all of there's various markers that we're using for this umbrella term of well-being that that we can say some things, like we really can say some things. And I think the reason that the well-being part is so important is because at base level, the only thing we really know, and maybe the only thing that we can know, because I'm like you, where it's like, I don't even know if there's truth anymore. If there is, I don't even think we're interacting with it, like whatever ultimate reality is. And so the base level then is the only thing that we can know is that we're conscious, that it's something to be like me. That even if we are aliens on an alien computer or like icons on an alien computer, they're playing Sims with us or whatever. Whatever is true about ultimate reality, the only thing we can know for sure is that it's something to be me. There's an experiential quality to existence. And so I think that's why it's such a good base to build on, is because it doesn't require a historical story or a miracle or metaphysics. It just starts with experience and paying attention to that. And then you can find, oh, when I'm in my body, certain core values mean more to me. When I'm in my body, this conversation is inherently meaningful, even if it wasn't recorded. At the end, oh, I forgot to press record. That's fine. Like I'm having a great time. And so like, I think that's why in our ignorance, the best place to build is from the point of view of experience, because we can really start to build something from there that's stable, that doesn't require us to know what is ultimate reality, because we just really don't know.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, we are going to be talking, so we should say something of value. And what you said is probably supreme. I'm curious about the non-dual crowd, the awakening people. I'm curious at where you are with that. I saw your interview that you did with Angelo DeLullo about a year ago.
Oh, you did? That's cool.
And I'm curious on your take on the kind of like the Rupert Spiras, the Adyashantis, the Gangajis,
Yeah.
what is your take on that?
Yeah. So just so people know, I've had a teacher from a wisdom tradition. He comes from a Sufi order, which is the mystical branch of Islam. And he's been a mentor of mine for over 20 years now. And so I've had many, many, many of these experiences where you experience these non-dual states where the concept, you can do on psychedelics too, but even in meditation and some of the experiences I've had where the concept that like I'm a Brittany Hartley, I would just have no anchor for that kind of thought. And so my skepticism of non-dualism is not because I don't experience these things. Like I just did a course with my teacher on mysticism. It's on my website. We did a 4-week course exploring mysticism, which is the focus on the experience of what people call God without having to put any language or religion around it. And so I'm very much a fan of exploring these spaces as it's so interesting. It's so good for you. It does so many things for you in reducing your neuroticism and your ego and feeling belonging and feeling connected and feeling this base level of reality that it's just consciousness and objects and consciousness. I'm a fan of all of that language. Where I will be hesitant on dualists is I'm very hesitant whenever some human says, because I experienced X, therefore Y is true. And maybe, I'm biased like everybody else. It could be, Mormon trauma or anything like that. But for me, I was a history teacher before I did this work. And when you look at the expanse of history and you look back in history, every 500 years, you look back and you look at what people were saying, because I experienced X, Y is true. They were all wrong. All of them, like 100% wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
About something. And so I'm very skeptical of that move. So I'm with non-dualists as far as like, let's explore this experience, and it's totally valuable at the level of experience. But then they'll move to like being experts on the nature of consciousness. And I'm like, I don't think we can be sure of that line of reasoning yet. Like, just because you experience this doesn't mean that it's telling us something about ultimate reality necessarily. It could be, it could not be,
Definitely.
Mormons have an experience and the Book of Mormon is true, and someone has an experience with ghosts and someone has an experience with we have experiences all the time. And at the second we move to, therefore, I know what ultimate reality is, I know what consciousness is, I'm the God of the universe, I know what's going on here. That's where I have to say, maybe, but I can't go there with you. I just can't go there with you. So that's where I stop with non-dualists.
Yeah. I want to distinguish myself as not a teacher and probably a little weird and a kind of a shit disturber, but it's not going to be crazy. Like I'm my own probably craziest critic. But I just wanted to say something about like some of those things because it lands in certainty territory is what I feel like I'm picking up on. You know what I mean? Which I've like I want to think about Batman and the Joker for a second. Like, you know, there's a way of looking at it where it's like Batman is pissed off all the time. And the Joker, whether he's winning or losing, is having a good time. And people want to say, but he's crazy, or Batman's a good guy, or all this. So I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But he fucking wins. So what I'm saying is like, I just want to go deeper because we've gone so deep already. We've already gotten to some threshold that probably is not common when just to arrive at possibly well-being is a higher virtue than, or personally for you more valuable than truth. That's already so deep, but I feel like there is something there to go, like the conclusion that well we got to say something, or that certain historical events can be categorized as good or bad, or wrongness versus rightness, or even you mentioned having preferences. Like, what if? Just play with me for a sec here. What if preferences wasn't a final resting place? That there was somewhere beyond preferences, and this is pretty tricky because you're like, I already told you I've had non-dual experiences, you know what I mean, but we've got to come back, and I'm just seeing if it's possible, you know, if we can alchemize something here to go just a teensy bit further with this stuff, you know what I mean, like beyond preferences. Because it's too easy in the world of preferences for some like person to come out of the woodwork and go, well, what kind of a God would allow suffering? Sometimes the answer is like, what do you mean suffering? Like, what are you even talking about? That can be deconstructed, the notion of suffering. Maybe what you're so convinced is suffering isn't even what it appears to be. Sorry, that was a little bit crazy,
Yeah.
but maybe we can do something with
No,
it.
I get what you're saying. And I have this conversation. I just actually had this conversation in my DMs. I try to stay out of debates in my DMs and comment section, but catch me in a bad mood and I'm just gonna engage there. But yeah, I was just talking to a non-dualist the other day about my concerns in how non-dualism will sometimes avoid the problem of suffering, because they'll just say like, we're just the universe experiencing itself. Suffering is just these are just sensations. These are just sensations in consciousness. And I get all that, and I can go and experience that, and being the wave in the ocean, and I'm on board with all of that. But I do think that there's maybe some spiritual bypassing going on, in the sense that we can just bypass this problem of evil or
Mm.
problem of suffering by just saying it's not really suffering, it's just sensations in consciousness. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
fine, but like it just seems like to the zebra that's getting eaten by a lion while still alive, and just chunks are being taken out of the zebra. I, I I can't offer that zebra, hey, it's not really pain, it's not really unnecessary suffering, and this animal goes extinct
Yeah.
before humans are ever here for no reason, because it's just sensations and consciousness. That to me still doesn't feel good enough. I don't feel like it's honestly wrestling with the ethics of being alive in a world where we have to consume conscious life and kill conscious life to live. And so my sense in non-dualism is, while I can go into the experience with you, if you're going to use those experiences to say that suffering is just not a problem ethically, I have skepticism about that, is where what I would say about that.
Yeah. Like total valid point. But like, you know, my mind when you mentioned the zebra was like, we haven't been able to stop them from being eaten alive yet, and probably not going to. And
Mm-hmm.
what if, I mean, that lion might really like eating a zebra alive. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's tastier while it's alive. If I
Mm-hmm.
like moralization is going to happen, meaning I think you can observe some things sometimes. Like sometimes we claim authority over something that could also be observed. Like if you cut a
Mm,
frog in half and you dip its legs into boiling water, even without a brain, its legs pull away from the boiling water. And in a prolonged sort of space of non-dual, which like I'm not claiming I have or something like that, I'm just wondering if some sort of like this is very narrative heavy. All these things, this thing we're reasoning together with words, and I'm wondering if there's you know, the rest of the universe that seems to be running tickety boo without man's conclusions or humankind's men and women's conclusions. There seems to be some people claiming that they like can go there. And like that Angelo guy that you interviewed, he said something really peculiar in a video one time where he was like, I don't have an agenda. And I'm not trying to like validate that or say that that's true, but he was like, I don't know how I'm doing what I'm doing. Sometimes people ask, how do you work all day and then come and make all these videos? Like, what's your angle or what's your agenda? Or how do you plan these things out? And he's like, I don't plan anything. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And we're
yeah.
free as onlookers to like judge that. We're free to like judge
Mm,
and make our own assumptions about what's going on there. Um, I guess I'm just a little fixated on the notion of because that's a pretty it's pretty unsatisfying. Almost every answer to the answer of suffering. You know, I care about the gazelle
yeah.
getting eaten alive too. I'd probably try to stop that, but it's almost like can
Yeah.
it be thought of as involuntary? Not everybody
Yeah.
has that. Like there's the bystander effect, but you'll notice somebody comes running out and jumps into the flames to help.
Mm,
Did they choose? Did they plan it? Or is there something
yeah.
involuntary going on?
And this is I think where non-dualism does do some spiritual bypassing because okay, let's say that we are the universe experiencing itself and we're coming into awareness of what we are and we can have conversations with these words and things like that. It's like okay, but that doesn't morally mean that it should exist because imagine a world worse than this where we suffer as much as conscious creatures can suffer all the time and we come into awareness of that. Does that morally mean that you should protect that planet? Or is the moral thing to do in that situation to actually end that planet because it's actually hell. It's the most suffering of the most conscious creatures all of the time that is possible in the universe. Okay, let's say you come into awareness of that as the universe experience itself. And let's say that comes from source and all these words that you hear. Okay, that still doesn't morally say whether it should exist. And that's the question that I want non-dualists to engage with more because
Mm.
I feel like some of that is their own dealing with the problem of evil by using these thought-ending cliches of, well, you're just a wave in the ocean. It's like, okay, but like if you have a red button to destroy that ocean, like, should you? And I'm not saying we should. I just want to have a
Yeah,
conversation about it. Like, I,
yeah.
I want to not pretend that that's not a real ethical question to consider. And that was
Bypassing is
really like,
totally a real thing. Like it, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so yeah, I just want non-dualists to engage with the ethics more rather than just using these experiences to say like this is great. And it's like, maybe, but can we talk about it? Because
I don't think non-dualists
like
are
I'm doing the
inherently,
math.
yeah, but like it's like if Jesus was all of a sudden here, but he was a guy in the forest or something, like not just something that was written about and maybe cherry picked the best stories, or the Buddha was around or something, and it was a guy in the forest. What if they were like shockingly not as moral as you think or something? You know what I mean? Like sometimes I
Hmm.
wonder if it boils down to like yeah, the world's gonna try to build a dam and stop the waters from rising, and they're gonna argue, and it's gonna be absurd and it's gonna be paradoxical. But hey, man, you came and found me. And I was in the forest doing my
Hmm.
thing. And since you're here, if you really want to know what I have to say, is like if somebody came to that person, they might find somebody that's morally amoral. You're like
Hmm.
not interested in the morality of the situation. Do I believe humans will continue to problem solve? I think so. I think no matter how our consciousness evolves or whether we recognize and go through stages of absurdism or nihilism or all these different things, I think that there's a if you observe, we've been at trying to philosophize and understand reality and problem solve. It's something we have been at, and I understand that that issue sometimes is you're like, yeah, but stop stop like being amoral. Be moral for a second. Pick a side. You know what I mean? Like pick a side.
Yeah.
What do we do about this practical problem?
Yeah. Yeah, that really narrows down to like the moment that I lost faith in God, or at least lost my ability to worship God or interact with God, is this idea that even if your God is real, I'm doing the math as best I can. You know, I have faith, I'm trying to figure this out. I'm doing the math of because animal suffering is really the strongest critique, I think, against Christianity, because there's no point to it. There's no, all the arguments that you say we need suffering for humans don't apply to animals. There's no moral lessons. There's no atonement. There's no growth or awareness or any of these things. So why millions of years of animal suffering for 99% of species to go extinct, and then 300,000 years of human history where we're just confused, right? Like we don't know why there's an earthquake or why the sun comes up or all these things. And then you like reveal the plan. And it's like, for me in that moment, I was like, even if this God was real, it's not good enough. Like it's not good enough. And if my morality, because people will say like, oh, then you judged God. And it's like, okay, but if my morality is so different than God's, that like suffering and genocide is bad to me, but like but not bad to God, then like, okay, but like why that God then doesn't matter to me, because like whatever moral compass that God is working on, it's so alien to me that this God is of no use to me. And so for me, like becoming an atheist was never about like, I'm sure there is no God. There's many conceptions of God that I'm very open to. It was more so that this God, that this loving God, this creator God, I just did the math as best I could and got to a place where it's like, it's not good enough. Like, it's just not good enough.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciated parts of the Bible more after stopping being a Christian than I did while I was a Christian. And when it comes to the suffering thing, like sometimes I'll say something just to break things up, like that barely even makes any sense. Like, I wouldn't care if God came down and whispered in my ear, I don't want you to do this thing anymore. I'd go, fuck you. I'm going to do it anyway. Like, just to like, let's not pussyfoot around this idea for a sec. Excuse my language. Like let's get right down to it. Are you believing in God because you're afraid? What do we mean even by suffering? Like, what do we mean? Like pain? I'm not trying to be a smartass. I'm saying, what if there's another way to observe pain? Like, there could be two people, right? And there's like a bully in school, and there's two kids, and one kid comes home and he's like, this kid at school has been beating me up, like two brothers or something. And the mom takes that kid and he goes, that's horrible. I'm going to talk to the principal. Something got to be done about this. And then the other kid goes, yeah, look at all my scratches. Like, this is so like neat or whatever. And the mom's like, no, 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 no. It's horrible that he's beating you up. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not seeing it that way. I feel like this is training for me to be a warrior. And it's like, no, you're deluded. This is wrong. There's like a competition of ideologies there regarding even experience. Is it monstrous if something happens to somebody that the society has kind of categorized, like collectivized around and decided is monstrous, but the person that actually underwent the event is like not bothered by it? You might get a bunch of psychologists come in and go, you are a sociopath. Like, then that means you're sick and wrong. Humans are going to do this, it seems like. They're going to categorize, they're going to preferentiate, and they're going to do this, all this stuff that we're at. And I agree. I wouldn't fall back on religion to justify what suffering is. I just think for people going deeper and deeper and deeper, I maintain that there seems to be something that's not a bypass. You stay present, you stay responsible. And in one person, you might observe that as, wow, they're kind of a quiet person, and they still maintain their responsibilities. And in another person who understands the same deep truth about reality, they continue to be mentally ill. They continue to be sick, especially as perceived by the majority of the population. Did I say
where I would
something
go
just
with
now?
that, I would go with that. And then we can move on to another rabbit hole if you want.
Okay,
Where I
yeah,
would go
you're
with that
right. We went way too
is
long.
because now we're just kind of jumping into individual rabbit holes. So we'll jump on a collective one. But where I go with that is just this is a good wrapping up point for this is the Stockdale Paradox, which is really the most psychologically strong way to survive the worst suffering that humans have to go through, prisoners of war and torture and Holocaust, things like that. And the Stockdale Paradox was, this real prisoner of war. And it seemed like the people who did best in the worst situations are people who could do two things at once. And one thing was admit that it sucked, right? And be in the reality of it. Because the people who said, I'm going to be out at Christmas time, where they're like, you have no evidence of that. But the ones who just kind of had hope that left reality, when reality hit, they just psychologically crumbled and then they would die because like your hope or your belief or whatever is not matching reality. And so the people who did the best are the people who were really in the reality of the thing, life or suffering or that you're being tortured by humans or whatever it is. And also be able to hold this thing where I'm choosing how to respond to this. I'm living according to my own core values. This is, I choose to have hope. I choose that this situation is not going to break me. Whatever the narrative is, that is your response to the cards that you've been dealt. And when you can hold both, those are the people who not only live in these situations, are more likely to live, but when they survive, have significantly less PTSD because they're in reality. They know that humans can get to a point where they do this to other humans. They're in that reality. And also, they find that, okay, this seems to be reality. And also, there is something worth standing for. There are things worth standing against. There's suffering that I can reduce. There's ways that I can show up where I'm proud of the narrative of the story that I'm writing or whatever that piece is. And when you can hold both at the same time, that tends to be the real sweet spot.
I feel like the linchpin of that story is honesty, though.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But honesty with like, it's honesty, but also there's some hope in it too, that
Yeah.
like, instead of just collapsing in the nature of suffering, you're saying if suffering is bad, then how I show up matters in the world. And so my goal in this concentration camp, because I love humor, that's a really high core value for me, is I'm going to make one person laugh every day because it matters. When they
Yeah.
can do that, that tends to be the most psychological resilience that we get as humans with the most level of truth and honesty because they're in it.
All right.
That's the sweet spot. All
We're
right.
gonna let's make a total gear shift now.
Okay. All right.
And you might find this a question way out from left field here, but I feel I would like to hear from you for the young people out there because I respect your opinions on certain things. Young people who are facing the world that they're coming into right now. Do you have any suggestions on what they should do, how they should approach this ever-evolving world with there being so many choices available to people now? I think
Mm-hmm.
like just 30 years ago when I was growing up, I grew up in a church and it was like, this is the way, this is what you do right here.
Mm-hmm.
And now
Mm-hmm.
we all have these screens with a million philosophies being thrown at us. So for the young people who are they're teenagers right now and they're coming up in the
Mm-hmm.
in the world, what do you say to them?
Sure. Yeah. I'm curious. Do you have kids? Do you guys have
I
kids?
do.
You have
Yep.
kids. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So from what I'm seeing, I have four kids, and so this is a question that I deeply care about. Um, from what we're seeing with Gen Z, like you said, they experience a bigger world than any other generation in human history. They're seeing more problems, right? Than like they're seeing suffering from across the world that, our parents never would have even really known about. And also at the same time, because we're declining from religion and deconstructing from a lot of our institutions and things like that, we also have less of a nest period for Gen Z. I got a nest period in Mormonism where everyone I knew was Mormon, and you get to build an identity, and you have lots of adult mentors, and you have a community, and you have a lot of safety and security and structure. That's really good. When we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy kind of stuff, that's really good to get in childhood. So they're getting less of that. And also more problems and more choices. And so, of course, they're going to be more nihilistic, more anxious, more, suicidal ideation. When we look at how often we're getting suicidal ideation from teenagers, it's really shocking when you look at the numbers. So, for me, because there's lots of aspects to this problem, and certainly lots of nuances to it. But the thing that I can speak to as someone who does a lot of nihilism recovery coaching is that where I see teens get stuck is that all of the advice for nihilists, whether it be, existentialism or Nietzsche or Simone de Beauvoir or Sartre, whatever it is going to be to build a meaningful life. For Nietzsche, it was like, to be the Übermensch, something more than a man, where you're living according to your core values. And for Sartre, it's more about making authentic choices and building a life worth experiencing. But the problem that teens are getting stuck with is that they have no identity or sense of who they are. And they've had less of a nest period to build that up. And so all of that advice on just build a meaningful life according to authenticity and core values has nowhere to land for a teenager, because they don't know who they are. They have no sense of identity. They don't know what their core values are. They don't know really anything about themselves. And also with their screens, we know that they're exploring less. They don't, Gen Z doesn't dance anymore. And it's because someone at that dance will be recording you, and it will go on the internet. And so Gen Z as a generation just stopped dancing. And so it's things like that. And so because they have these multiple problems where it's less of a nest period, less of a chance to build up an identity, which you're supposed to do in childhood. So they're delayed in their development. They're leaving the house later, mistakes, and not just no freedom to make mistakes. Everything is watched. And then also not just for financial reasons, but also for development reasons. They're not leaving the house at 18 because they really didn't get a lot of that order and structure and identity and belonging that every other generation was born into. Every other generation was born into usually some kind of community with some kind of narrative. You were, I was too. They don't have that. And so that's what I'm seeing. And so I do have a YouTube video on this for someone who's like, oh, please talk more about this. But I did a YouTube video on how to start with, we leave all that existentialism stuff and we actually have to do identity first. Challenge yourself to get out of the house once a week and try something. Because unless we do that identity building piece, we're going to have nothing to build your life on, because you have no direction, because you have no sense of who you are. So we have to actually build up the who you are first and do a lot of work with core values and self-exploration before we can even talk about what it is for you to choose a meaningful life for you. And a lot of people don't realize that, because they take for granted that they got that in childhood and the teens today didn't.
So much map and no territory. So much map and very little territory.
And no compass, right? Yeah, no compass. If you're doing this at 35, you have a little bit of sense of who you are. You can start to find your way, but no compass, and then no ability to explore to get that compass, because everything's recorded and you're kind of living vicariously online. So it's a really tough spot for them. I don't envy the mission that Gen Z is faced with here.
Yeah. And what you said about community is super interesting and valid and important because it's like the power that immersion has, like exposure therapy. Like this is kind of my contention with the aspect of it that's identity. Even though it's like, no, it's settled, it works. I'm that much of a smartass. I'll just take a little bit of contention with it, which is like I can imagine somebody that did everything perfectly and actually like gets to the point where they're sort of like a golden shining example of success. And their narrative, like a robot, if you ask them, like they'd be like, I did everything right, and behold, I am a success. Like, but I'm thinking about the fact that there seems to be pockets in history where suicidality wasn't the main concern of the day, but it was like conditions were brutal, things were bad, people were immersed in this shit, and then I'm thinking about suicidal ideation, like the thought I should kill myself, like that's going to be the solve. That seems to be something that would like I would imagine a mind would say that to itself when it's calling bullshit on the ideology that's being like served it. Like there's a lot of pressure sometimes people have. I would imagine people get suicidality because of pressure. It's like, man, I have to push you out of the nest. And I don't do this with my kids. It's not what I'm trying to say here. But it's like, I can remember a time when it was like, you will be pushed out of the nest. And then you're not going to be thinking about how much anxiety you have to this upcoming dance because you're already there. And now you already have to mindlessly immerse yourself in the situation. I guess like what I'm saying is I'm careful not to like add more headiness to a problem that seems to be developing out of headiness, like out of like all these examples and pressures and models. The map is not the territory. It's not knowing everything about going through basic training in the military is like never going to be the same thing as actually being in it. Or you know what I mean? Like going to trade school is never going to be the same thing as what it feels like to actually hit your thumb with a hammer that first day. And then some like big lumbering boss comes over and says, you broke your cherry. You know what I mean? Like a good job. You got, that's a good thing. There's just something about being in it as distinct from any kind of like preparation we could do about it that I'm sort of fixated on with that, like
the experience over like the priority on experience.
Not just the because it's kind of it's kind of freaky to think about so many people in the lap of the most progressed time we're at the cutting edge of history. It's never been more present than right now. It is that in that space with all this technology and opportunity and everything, that people are having this thought so frequently that I should end it. And I feel like pressure holds a thing here, and being in a headspace of like, I experienced things growing up through the 90s and when I went through where it was like, this is an amoral situation, but before you know it, you're in it. There's no escaping that you're a part of this thing now. And then post hoc, you might ruminate on it and be stricken with guilt or regret or whatever. Yeah. But when you're in it, you're in it. Something about the heady mind becomes self-eating or self-destroying or something. And I simply just I'm not apt to trust somebody that's claiming I did it right and behold, like I'm a success now. You know what I mean? Like, why are you telling me that?
Yeah. I think this goes back to our conversation of just we have to be careful of throwing religion away too quickly if well-being matters. Because, for example, a great example of exactly what you're talking about is that every society in history had rites of passage for children to move from childhood to young adults.
Initiation.
And adults, right? Some kind, like you're in something, right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking about. And there's usually some kind of challenge or something that pushes you at the edge, and then you're presented to the community and you're more a part of a community in this different way. And what we did, in our quest for truth is we looked at the story of whatever they were doing with this ritual. And yeah, the story's bullshit. The God or whatever narrative story that they put this in probably is, not gonna hold up to science. And so we threw it away. And then now, years later, we're like, oh, we actually just discovered developmental, evolutionary psychology, that we learned that when you're in puberty, your brain is really a mess. And when you have a ritual to say, okay, you're changing, you're moving away from this thing and moving into this thing, and we have a structure for it, and we're going to help you with this.
Yeah.
That was actually genius. And so too many atheists look at the story of however they're doing this ritual and think it's bullshit. And then really, actually, though, if we co-evolved with religion, there was actually something genius in developing a rite of passage that our kids are not getting, but some quote unquote primitive society got, and their teen brains were healthier for it. And that's why, again, like, I want to go back to like well-being matters for my teen, because I want them to get the rite of passage or the benefit or whatever this is, and try as best I can not to, participate in dogma or things that I don't believe. But if I just say, well, that's not true, you're throwing away a tool that would help your teenager so much. And like, that has to matter. Like that has to matter.
You ever heard of the book Iron John by Robert Bly? It's all about male initiation things and what happened to men when those went away in the Industrial Revolution. But it like explores all these different versions of it, where sometimes it was like, you might think of it as silly. Like they get the kid to crawl through this pile of things and comes out on the other side, and they just do a little thing. And that had a profound, because you're pretty in it at that moment. Like the elders kidnap you, and they're like, you might die. You know what I mean? They put you through
it's embodied. Yeah, it's an experience. Yeah,
that's the thing that stands out to me about it, is you're probably never more present. Life has probably never been more potently meaningful than through something as a young lad or whatever that you're scared of, and then overcoming it. And then valuing life and being part of a system and perpetuating it because how good it was for you. Interesting, how are we supposed to redo that?
That's a different way, yeah. And we have to challenge atheism in that way, that like, hey, if we co-evolved with religion, we need to check out what's going on there before we just say, oh, the story is stupid, let's just throw the whole thing out. And so for me, like, how I did this recently was I just turned 40 this year. And so I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a rite of passage. I'm just, you can just do these things. You can just create it. So I got together my girlfriends, and we, one of the older ones who's very wise figure in my life, she kind of walked us through this teaching of moving from the archetype of maiden to mother to crone. And there was whole stories around that. And I had all the women in the group come, and instead of a birthday present, bring some piece of hard-earned wisdom, and let's share it with each other. And then we went to the circle and we did a ritual where we had wine and bread. We're all ex-Mormon or ex-Christian, most of us. And we reclaimed the sacrament, and we did this ritual with each other where we kind of bless the bread and water, that it's our blood actually that bleeds for humanity. It's my body that was put on the altar when my body was split in two in order to bring a child into this world. And so we reclaimed that ritual. It was beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's this, again, split in the atheist community, and women tend to be a little bit better with this one, I think, where I can show you the science of how a ritual like that would just be so good for you, right? So meaningful, so healing, so beautiful. I mean, female friendships are a sign of longevity because women tend to each other in these really beautiful ways. And so I can show you all the science behind ritual. I can show you that I didn't believe anything metaphysical here. There was no magic going on. We know that we're playing. We know that this is just a game. And I can tell them all of that. And some of the atheists will say, okay, fantastic. Let's go play in this space. This is super fun and super meaningful. And then there's this side of atheism. It's more of that kind of hyper-rational man who's clinging to his rationality, who can look at all the science of what I'm doing, the science of rituals, and still say, I could never do something like that. And so in that moment, if you're the guy who said, I could never do something like that, and I'm showing you the science of why it's good for your brain, then you're actually not there for truth at all. You're there because rationality is your identity. It is your security blanket. And then you're a hypocrite.
Britt, I am a silly goose, and I have tried to rope people into my silly ritualistic shit over time. I don't know if it boils down to types of people, but it's like, the answer seems obvious. It's like, all right, honey, we can either go into the woods and be empowered and claim authority over this whole blood thing, or we can have an icy trip to the pharmacy to get you your first, no talking. We'll go to the pharmacy and embarrassedly get your first day. It's like, give me the fucking witch ceremony. Like, let's dance under the moonlight. Yeah. Like, yeah. But I noticed that that people are different. Like I've noticed the same thing because I'm an odd duck throughout my life. People go, what are you doing? No, I don't want to. I'm not doing that. And sometimes like, you totally want to do this. You're just insecure. You know what I mean? Like that's really your problem. But I couldn't tell you at the end of the day if people really are, that there's somebody out there that would prefer the sterile, science-sanctioned approach to some of these things. It sounds like a blast. And I know plenty of women that would love that.
And for me, I was really skeptical of these spaces. Some of this is just religious trauma that just it feels like it's going to be woo. It feels like somebody's starting a cult. If you looked at us, we're in hooded cloaks. We've got fires. We're dancing in a circle. Like, it looks weird, right? And so it can be scary when you're coming from religion of like, I don't like coming away from one. I couldn't trust my emotions. My emotions got manipulated, And so that space can be really scary. And so I'm not invalidating that. There were years where I never could have done something like that. It would have been way too triggering. So for me, the reason that science can be helpful, I'm not trying to demonize science, is that if we can get the science piece of, hey, this is the brain reasons why rituals scientifically process emotions out of your body, mark values, decrease pain, increase pleasure. We have science on all of that. The science then allows you to walk back into a space that was once a little maybe scary or feels a little weird, or maybe you feel self-conscious. But hopefully the science can make you feel safe enough that then you can walk into that space and explore, have more of an embodied experience. And then life is just better. It was a kick-ass 40th birthday party. It was awesome.
My daughter would friggin' have loved that. In fact, she would have brought pentagrams galore. Actually, I don't know. She just would have probably even surprised some of the people there because she's already into like that ritualistic type stuff, and she's like atheist too. But it's fun. Symbols and cloaks and fire and all that stuff. It's fun for those that get it, and maybe that boils down to like. There's plenty of dudes that are into that. Like there's dudes ritualisticking it up, 3 a.m.
In my experience, like atheist women tend to be a little bit more exploratory in that space than atheist men. That's just my anecdotal experience as someone who works with atheists.
I'm curious about your crowd. Who, now that you're on YouTube, because I guess you've been there for a while now, and I guess you're almost reaching 100,000 subs. That's awesome. You're gonna get your plaque. Who's jumping into your comments section like the most predominant? Like, what's your demographic and
like against me or
just all around? Who's your most like predominant crowd? Like ours would be like when I look up on the YouTube algorithm, it's probably like 18 to 44 dudes, like men probably watch our show. Yeah. Hey guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be kind of two kind of groups. One group would be people who are skeptical, deconstructed religion maybe, tend towards agnosticism, but feel a little bit of lack in their lives, like they're not thriving in their agnosticism. And my ability to express things in a science-friendly way help, they'll come back for that because they can see, hey, there's something here that seems to help Britt thrive that I don't have in my life. And so there's that agnostic but lacking crowd is usually kind of my base. And then the other side would just be that I'm going to offend everyone equally. So like I'm offending atheists. Like Matt Dillahunty went after me. Like
Oh, wow.
his comment section, Jesus Christ, like went after me, right? I'm making atheists mad by even using the word spirituality. I'm making religious people mad, obviously, because I'm a heretic. And then I'm also making new age people mad because like, yeah, let's go play in astrology or tarot or whatever, but don't force me to believe that the planets like absolutely affect human personality and human events without hindsight bias. I'm not there. I'm not going to believe that.
Yeah.
And so like I'll get called out for my skepticism for new age things, and so I'm calling out everyone, and everybody's unhappy with me. So there's a fair amount of that, but you know. I'm not for them, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's just
I
is
love
what it
calling
is.
out everyone. I love that.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
love
I
that
just
there's people who call everyone out.
every
Good.
everyone is upset with me because like, hey, like spiritual atheists, it's not a big community, it's not a big identity. We don't really have a camp, and so the other camps are very upset. But the reason I continue to show up, because I'm not really a contra like I'm not a person who loves controversy by nature, is that crowd that like, okay, fine, I left religion. I'm lacking. What do I do for my kids? Should I even have kids? Or, because I'm becoming antinatalist, or like, what is the point of this? And that space, I remember being there. I remember being totally alone, questioning whether it's even ethical to be alive. Okay, I left religion. I don't know. I don't know anything about anything. I have no idea how to like build a meaningful life. I don't even know what you're talking about. I remember being there. It was lonely. It sucked. I had no tools or resources because they all had dogma around it that I couldn't believe anymore. And so regardless of making people mad, like I'll continue to show up to that agnostic but lacking space.
I love that you're so empathetic and compassionate. Like, that's such a man, that's like a solid, really good part of this whole thing is the fact that you recognize these things and you're so damn smart and capable of tackling each and every one of those fine aspects. Like the person that's agnostic, but it's not working for them quite yet. Like, and then you see that and you got this ability to be like, well, I can help. I can help with that. I think
So
that's like
Hopefully, I try to.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of goodness there, but at the same time, it doesn't negate my thing of like sometimes you got to call everyone out. Like even if you're compassionate,
Including ourselves. Yeah.
including of hella including ourselves.
Yeah.
That can emerge at the same time. There can be a calling out of everything and compassion and usefulness.
so let's
Same
get
time.
one golden nugget here then.
Okay.
So for
All right.
for someone like yourself, because I'm sure like there's a lot of moms who are in the deconstruction journey. They're probably turning 40 just like you, at their cusp. Their kids are getting older now. They can see that, oh, may not be too long from now till they're off doing their own thing. And there might be some anxiety there about like what happens next. Maybe you could provide something for all the people who are kind of in similar situations like yourself. What would you say for those women out there?
Yeah, for the women who have families who are deconstructing from religion, and this is sometimes hard to hear. It certainly was hard for me to grapple with, but I've read a lot in this space and tried to look at the science behind it. Is that the best thing I could do for like myself and my children, and reducing that anxiety and just feeling at peace and feeling at home in my own home and family, is to actually do what religion did, but just do it authentically. So for Mormonism, for example, that gave me a map. Mormons have temples always on their walls, or the prophet or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put some stuff on my walls. What are some of the things that like symbols and people and phrases that just remind me about the values that we have in our family? Okay, I'm going to do that. Okay, Mormons will pray before they eat. Okay, that's actually scientifically fantastic for children. It's one of the main things that will reduce their anxiety, is gathering for a meal and marking your vow for a meal. Like religion figured out all these things before we had science to prove what it was doing. And so we'll say, we have a phrase that we say before we eat. And then Sunday, like I used to go to church. I don't do that anymore. We read a library book, some kind of moral lesson. We play family games. We go on a walk. We do our calendar for the week. I create a little family church. It's like half an hour on a Sunday. Really good for my kids, right? And so for me, what really helped myself and my husband and my kids are doing okay. What really helped is kind of using religion as a template, but filling all these things the way that I would want to do them. What are the holidays that I would want to celebrate in my family? Okay, I want to celebrate May the 4th be with you. And I want to talk about Star Wars stuff. And I want to use Star Wars stories to talk about good and evil and totalitarianism and all kinds of things. Okay, fantastic. We're going to do May the 4th. And we just started to rebuild. Like, what would be the religion of me? What would be the saints on the wall? What would be the stories? What would be the rituals? What would be the Sunday morning? What would be, for Christmas? Did this before, J.K. Rowling was a divisive figure, but like we started doing Harry Potter Christmas. And my kids just love it. And so we do that. We do Harry Potter Christmas. And anyway, so my advice, like the best thing I ever did for my family was to intentionally use religion as a template and replace all those things with things that are authentic to me and my husband. And that really got to a place where like we have a family culture and my kids seem pretty grounded in that so far, in a way that I'm really happy that I went through that intentional work. Now it's like, it has a momentum of its own. It's just our family culture. But yeah, at the beginning, it's a little work to intentionally think, what holidays do I want to celebrate and why and how? It takes a little work, but once you get that going, it's a momentum all of its own that makes your home really feel like home.
Traditions. They've got some
traditions.
How many of us, probably everybody, got some shiny memories around certain traditions.
I'm gonna have to create an anime day. Our families are really
Absolutely.
into anime. Anime day.
Yeah.
I love
something.
that.
Annual.
Well, Britt, I just want to say thank you so much for coming back again. It was amazing to have you back on the show. Love this conversation. Love what you had to say, and it's awesome to see where you and your channel are going. One thing we like to do now on the show is kind of give our guests the last say. So if you have one maybe last overarching thing that you want to leave towards our audience out there, we'll give you this time to say that, and then maybe you can let them know where they can find you, what you got going on, and all that good stuff.
Sure. I would say for me, since we talked a little bit about nihilism and meaninglessness today, I would say to give some people a little hope who are listening, the golden nugget, the treasure of going through an existential crisis or nihilism or meaninglessness, is that it forces you, going back to you talking about honesty, it forces you to be honest about a life that's worth experiencing for you. And all the narratives and the ego and what will my parents think and how silly will I look, all of that goes away when you're like, I don't want to fucking live anymore. Like, you know what I mean? And so the treasure that people find in nihilism, if we can process through this, is that it forces you to truly be honest. What is the life that I want to experience? And how can I build on that and take like radical moves in that direction? Because then people will say like, oh, how do I do that? I don't have a lot of money, or, capital's like, you can, like, if you actually remove a lot of societal constraints, you have way more freedom than you think you do. Way more freedom than you think you do. One of the first things I did was, oh, you know what I really hate doing? I really hate buying clothes. I'm going to wear these 10 t-shirts and these 10 pair of pants or whatever it is. And that's it. That's it. I'm not doing this every season. I got to buy a whatever. I hate it. I'm not going to do it. And like little things like that start to add up where I say no to 1,000 things that actually, truly, you don't have to do. Like, you're not going to die. You really aren't. And so like for nihilism, it's like you're suffering so much. You already want to die sometimes. Why not then throw all of that energy into radically making your life worth living, saying no to all kinds of things, and so that you can say yes to the things that truly make life worth living for you. And when you can get that little treasure piece, I see people go from, every day in my work, I see people go from suicidality to, oh my God, what a miracle to be alive. And I've seen that happen. That happened to me. And so there's hope in this meaningless space. There's a treasure there that's worth exploring. And if you want to learn more about that, I have a really good nihilism course on my website. It's all no nonsense spirituality, my YouTube, my website, my book, on social media. And just such a great pleasure to hang out with you guys. And what I love about these conversations is I know very little about your personal lives. As we skipped 15 years of small talk of like, where are you from? And blah, blah, blah. And we just went right down into the core of it. And that's what I love about hanging out with you guys.
Why waste time? Super well said, the last thing you said. Do you hear that, everybody? There's hope. And I trust your method here, man. I think a lot of people should go check you out.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Britt. This was awesome.
Thanks, guys.